Hello, and thank you for joining us for our online service. We're so glad that you're here. If you're new with us, my name's Jim, and I am one of the associate pastors here at Willowdale Chapel and the pastor of our Celebrate Recovery community. Now, for those of you that have been with us, that I know that you've been just excited about this moment. I mean, ever since we said we were going to do a series on the Song of Songs, and we're looking at the wisdom of romantic love, you've been anticipating this moment, and I get it. They don't call me the doctor of love for nothing. But actually, I think I've been mistypecast here, because today we're going to be looking at chapter 5. And in chapter 5, conflict has come to our newlyweds, and they roll me out for conflict. But hey, conflict, here's the reality. We can't seem to escape it, can we? Not even in the very best of marriages. So today, we're going to try to mine out the reason that we experience conflict and what we can do about it when it does come. And so we're going to read through this passage in chunks, and we're just going to dive in piece by piece as we move along. There is a little debate about this chapter. Some folks will tell you what we're about to read is the retelling of a dream. Others will tell you that no, this is the retelling of an actual account that really happened. The good news is we don't have to decide because the message is the same and there is much that we can learn from it. And if you are curious, yes, I do lean to the fact that this is a dream, simply because it's very similar to the dream that we read in chapter 3. And it has a dream-like cadence and rhythm to it. Now, in chapter 3, this couple, their passions were stirred for each other, but they were not yet married. Now, in chapter 4, this couple has been married. And so now we find them as newlyweds, just stepping into and learning the rhythms of life together. So we're going to begin with chapter 5, verses 2 through 6. And in the voice of the woman, it reads, I slept, but my heart was awake. Listen, my beloved is knocking. Open to me, my sister, my darling, my dove, my flawless one. My head is drenched with dew, my hair with the dampness of the night. I have taken off my robe. Must I put it on again? I have washed my feet. Must I soil them again? My beloved thrust his hand through the latch opening. My heart began to pound for him. I arose to open for my beloved, and my hands dripped with myrrh, my fingers with flowing myrrh on the handle of the bolt. I opened for my beloved, but my beloved had left. He was gone. My heart sank at his departure. I looked for him, but did not find him. I called him, but he did not answer. And see, conflict, it arises for our newlyweds, as it does for all of us. You know, though, our homes of origin, our experiences in life, our norms, they're different, but they matter. See, in my formative years, in my household, we did anger, but we didn't really do conflict. See, Dad would get angry and rage, and he would jump in his car and he would take off, disappear for a couple of hours, and then he would return home, no longer angry, but we didn't do conflict. Like, we didn't talk about it. We didn't address it. It was like it never happened, right? You just don't simply walk up to the bear and poke it, right? So now I'm newly married, and conflict arises in my marriage. And I couldn't even tell you what the issue was that we were arguing about that day. Like most of the conflict that me and my wife, Mary Ann, have had, I can't really look back and remember the issue, but I remember the conflict. So I have no memory what we were arguing about that day. But I got angry, and I did what you do. And I jumped in my car. I took off. I was gone for a couple hours. I cooled off. I was fine. I came home. We spent the rest of the afternoon together. We ate dinner together. And then late into the evening, I said goodnight and I went off and headed to bed. And so now it's about 30 minutes later. I'm in my own dream state, in my bed, And all of a sudden, I have this grown woman, this lunatic woman standing on my bed, jumping up and down, yelling, "We don't go to bed mad in this house. We don't go to bed mad in this house. We talk about things." Well, this was a novel idea to me. I've never kind of considered that. And I just kept explaining, but I'm not angry. I'm not mad. Apparently, she might have been. See, conflict comes for all of us and our experiences matter, but not dealing with them is not an option, or at least that's what I've been taught. See, this scene opens with our fine lady asleep in her sleeping attire, wrapped warm in her comforter with clean feet, and she's woken by a knock on the door by her lover. It's like, well, where has he been? We don't know. Another late night at the office, working late? Was he out with the boys while she's just sitting at home waiting for him to come? Where has the jerk been all night as I've been sitting here waiting for him? And we don't know the answer to that. But what we do know is that he has now returned home and he is ready to continue the honeymoon. And he calls out his sweet, typical nothings, "My darling, my dove, my flawless one." See, this is another thing missing from my life experiences, because I'm coming up on 33 years of marriage and my wife tells me I have no idea what a sweet nothing is, which is true, because if you think about it, how can a nothing be sweet, or really anything for that matter? Well, his sweet nothings, they're not going over very well either. And he gets no response from her. So he turns to more practical matters. "Hey, it's raining out here. I'm getting wet. Let me in, please." And she finally responds, "I have already taken off my robe and washed my feet. How could I possibly put my robe back on?" I don't know, maybe one arm at a time? Like, this is clearly not about the robe for her. But ladies, just know this. Most of us men, we will miss the nuance of those things. So he does what any logical man would do. He tries to break into his own home. Well, now her sleep's been disturbed anyway, so she might as well come and open the door and let him in. And as she opens the door, her hands are covered with myrrh, covered with his cologne, with his scent. Now, guys, hey, when you're going home today, grab a bottle of Axe body spray. Just bring it home and start spraying it on all the doorknobs and handles, because apparently this does the trick. See, the smell of him, the smell of his cologne has reminded her, and it has reignited her desire for him, and she also now is ready to reignite the honeymoon. However, she took a little too long to come around and come to the door for his liking, and now he's gone. It's like the original Thunder Road from Bruce. When she got to the porch, he's gone on the wind. This, to me, is just so comedically real. It's funny. I mean, does it sound familiar to anyone else? She desires to be with him, but he's off doing who knows what, right? She's waiting. He's being selfish. He shows up. He desires to be with her. But now it's her who went to bed. She's over it. And now she's being selfish while he's standing in the rain. She comes to the door for him. But now he's gone. If she doesn't want me around, then fine. I got things to do. Back to his selfishness. And like I've already said, I don't remember much of the conflict, the issue that we have fought about, as much as I remember the conflict itself in my life. Meaning that most of the times, the things we argue about, the issue itself, isn't really that big of a deal. But we are broken people with a sin nature. And at the center of our sin nature lies our selfishness. Here we have two people deeply in love with each other. They both want the same thing for their marriage. They both want to continue the honeymoon, but they can't get in sync. They can't get in rhythm together. They both desire the same thing. They each want the same thing, but they each want it their way and when they want it. They are each looking to their own needs. He has his expectations while she has hers. And it plays out in real life all the time, doesn't it? I mean, even in the simplest of ways, it plays out. You both want dinner. You both want the same thing. But what are you going to eat, or where are you going to go? You know, it's like, what would you like for dinner? Oh, I don't know. Well, why don't you pick? How about steak? Well, I was kind of thinking Italian. It's like we both want dinner, but now it's going to take like this hour-long, semi-heated conversation to figure out what we're going to have or where we're going to go. And I say, you pick, hoping that you're going to pick the thing that I want anyway, and then when you don't, I'm going to disagree with you. It's maddening, and we do it to ourselves and to each other all the time if we're honest. We just can't get in sync, even though we share the same desire. As Shakespeare said, the course of true love never did run smooth. And that's because we all have a sin nature, and at its core is our selfishness. Look, if you're single here today and you're looking for your potential spouse, just know there are no perfect spouses. I'm sorry to inform you of that, but there just isn't. We all have a sin nature that makes us acutely aware of our own needs and our own wants over the needs and wants of another. But that does not mean we cannot have our version of happily ever after. It's just a little bit more raw, a little bit more real, and a little less fairy tale. All right, let's get back to our text. When we left our fine lady, she was running off to find her man, and we pick up the scene in the next verse, verse 7. The watchmen found me as they made their rounds in the city. They beat me, they bruised me, they took away my cloak, those watchmen of the walls. Okay, this is what makes me think that this is more of a dream state. I am deeply in love with my wife, and there are times I've gone looking for her. It's a beautiful, warm, sunny day, and I come home and the house is empty, and I think, oh, maybe she took the kids to the park, and I'll drive by the park to go to find them. Or we're coming from different locations to meet at a previously agreed upon spot, and I'll come to find her. But no matter what this situation has been, and no matter how deeply in love I am with her, do you know what I've never forgotten? My pants. Like, I've never reached for my wallet in my back pocket and went, oh, my pants, right? I forgot my pants. But here, she has gone looking for him. She is walking through the town square in her nightgown, her lingerie, whatever it is. And when the watchmen find her, they suspect she is a prostitute. And she is unjustly harmed by the very men who were charged to protect her. And this is why it feels a little bit more like a dream sequence to me. This little verse here in the middle, it's never tied back into the story. It's never discussed. It's never approached in any way. It's just this random event that occurs because, in fact, the next verse we get to, she's asking her friends to get a message to him. And that message, tell him that I am head over heels and faint in love with him. Like, if this happened to Marianne, if she was unjustly harmed, I am sure she would look to get me a message, but it would be more of an SOS, a call for help. And so this scene is just quickly passed and not discussed. But if you'd allow me a minute just to sit here, I don't want to skip past this too quickly because tragically, physical and sexual abuse against women is deeply embedded in our culture. Statistically, women listening to this, they have suffered horrific abuse. It's said that 1 in 6 American women, they suffer sexual assault. And, if that's you, let me just first say, I am sorry you experienced that. Like, that should never happen. And I'm sorry that it happened on my watch. Men, we all long for a day where any woman, alone or with another, at any time of day or night, can walk where they choose and do so safely. but we need to find ways to do better. See, I don't know what it feels like to have to strategically park when I pull into a parking lot, looking for the place of best lighting. I don't know what it feels like to have a plan to walk out of a store after dark to get to my car in the parking lot, keys in hand at the ready, thumb on the panic button. Men, let's be better watchmen. If you see a woman walking through a dimly lit parking lot as you're walking to your car, just walk to your car a little slower. Take your time putting on your seatbelt and starting your car. Just make sure she gets in hers and drives safely away before you head out of the parking lot. You know, if you know a situation that needs to be confronted, confront it. But do so wisely. We never want to increase risk for another. And if you don't know how to address a situation that you know that's happening wisely, find someone that does. But let's not sweep bad behavior of others under the rug. Don't ignore it. Let's be better watchmen for our sisters. Let's love and care for our sisters better. Ladies, if you are sitting silently dealing with such abuse, we want to be here for you. Please don't keep in the dark things that need to be brought into the light in order to heal from. And of course, our entire staff is here for you. But we know in situations like this, sensitive matters, gender matters. And we have women on staff. We have, the men have wives. Any of them would love to be available to you, to sit with you and to find ways to rally our church around you, to care for you and to love you. And they will hold your confidence. Besides that, we have people who have been through similar situations, and they are finding their recovery and their healing. We have communities on Monday night, Celebrate Recovery, Re-engage, in which many people are overcoming the effects of abuse in all of its forms. We also have counseling services available. So you are not alone, and nothing you could say to us would shock us. You know, sometimes people in recovery will say, oh, we're all here because we're not all here. Meaning people have damaged us. People have taken things from us. But that is neither the bottom line nor the last word on that. All right, let's leave that there and let's get back to our text. After this tragic event, we go to verse 8 and it says, Daughters of Jerusalem, I charge you, if you find my beloved, what will you tell him? Tell him I am faint with love. And her friends respond, how is your beloved better than others, most beautiful of women? How is your beloved better than others that you so charge us? And we can learn much from friends like these. They don't hold back. They ask an honest question. And yet there's not a hint of like them trying to fix her or fix her problems. But it's an honest question, right? It's as if they're saying, hold on a minute. This guy who comes home late, this guy with such anger problems and little patience who runs off in a huff just because you didn't respond fast enough for his liking, this is the guy that you charge us with bringing this message of your enduring love to? Really? Tell us more. Why should we? Why is he better than any other man out there? And from this question, she remembers. She remembers that all that is good about her beloved. And she recalls all he has said about her. And so she returns the compliment in a similar fashion, starting at the top of his head down to his feet. And she says, starting in verse 10, my beloved is radiant and ruddy, outstanding among 10,000. His head is purest gold. His hair is wavy and black as a raven. His eyes are like doves by the water streams, washed in milk, mounted like jewels. His cheeks are like beds of spice, yielding perfume. His lips are like lilies, dripping with myrrh. His arms are rods of gold, set with topaz. His body is like polished ivory, decorated with lapis lazuli. His legs are pillars of marble, set on bases of pure gold. His appearance is like Lebanon, choice as its cedars. His mouth is sweetness itself. He is altogether lovely. This is my beloved. This is my friend, daughters of Jerusalem. And like I said earlier, sweet nothings are lost on me, but I have to ask the question. Like, is this the same guy she's talking about that just a short time before she couldn't even be bothered to slide out of bed for and walk 10 feet over to open the door? So ladies, just know, if your beloved is similar to me, just know sometimes we have trouble keeping up with you. She did, however, convince her friends. And so they respond with an offer to help, and they ask more questions. And so her friends say in verse 6, "Where has your beloved gone, most beautiful of women? Which way did your beloved turn, that we may look for him with you?" And that question, it takes away all of her anxiety. She already knows where he would be. She knows where to find him because she remembers him. She remembers their vows. She knows him and he knows her. See, they are one. Even in conflict, they are one, and intimacy is restored. And she responds, "My beloved has gone down to his garden, to the beds of spice, to browse in the gardens and to gather lilies. I am my beloved's, and my beloved is mine. He browses among the lilies." Now, I started this with the premise that in our sinful nature, selfishness takes hold. And in moments of misalignment between couples, it's certainly stirred and it brings conflict. 10 times in the passage we read today, we have read where she has declared him to be my beloved. Or her friends respond with an equivalent statement. Right? My beloved, 10 times. Now here, intimacy is restored. A subtle but very important transition occurs between the couple. He is no longer her beloved, but now she belongs to him. I am my beloved's, and likewise, he is her beloved. When the selfishness that each have is subdued, we come to realize that the other is not ours, but we belong to the other. It's this change of posture in which I am no longer more concerned with my needs than I am with the others. It puts us in right standing with each other in a way that we can hear and see the needs of the other. But if we're honest, this acute understanding of our own needs is not going to go away, right? So conflict will occur again. But how do we keep this posture towards each other correct? Right? Particularly in times when I feel my needs are being overlooked or I'm overlooking the needs of my wife. In other words, how do we fight well when conflict occurs? We need to know what makes a good fight, and we need to know it beforehand, because these conflicts, if we're honest, seem to spring up out of nowhere. Like one minute, we're holding hands, walking through the park, enjoying a beautiful day. And then the next moment, she's walking a determined pace 5 feet ahead while he's slowly shuffling his feet. She's saying something he can't hear while he's mumbling something under his breath. Like it sneaks up fast. So we need to know how to fight well, to give ourselves a chance to recalibrate and remember that we are still us. We have to remember that conflict has the ability to inflict harm and resentment. It'll steal our energy and time, and it will pull us apart if we fight poorly. And it's not fair for us to expect the other to know my concerns or my needs in the moment. See, bad fighting is trying to win the fight. No, it's us. We win together. Good fighting is looking to resolve the conflict. I mean, it's us versus the conflict, not us versus each other. See, bad fighting is confrontational. It's defensive. Good fighting is cooperative and receptive. Bad fighting shifts blame to the other, while good fighting owns responsibility. Bad fighting, it's egocentric, it's self-righteous, it's selfish. A good fighting, it's empathetic and understanding. It's not selfish, but it's a view towards the other. Bad fighting brings discord, and a good fight restores intimacy. Good fighters fight for us, not simply for my way. Now, that's a lot to keep in mind, particularly when you are caught off guard by conflict. And there are a number of tools out there, but here's one easy one to remember when the heat of conflict comes. CORE. It helps us fight well. CORE. The C, cooperation. It's not you versus them, but it's us versus the issue at hand. There was a study done and concluded that the best arguers would work in tandem with their spouse. According to the study, it said that the person who said we the most during an argument brought the best solutions. Spouses that used second-person pronouns, you, tended towards negativity. And those that used we provided positive solutions. And the good news is we can practice this. We can learn this. And this turns a win-lose fight into a win-win fight. It's having the attitude that says, hey, if you win, I win too. And then the O is ownership. When conflict arises, you have to ask yourself, what part of this do I need to own? Then own it, verbalize it, apologize for it. See, the blame game is just way too easy of a trap for any of us to fall into. Well, if you could manage money, well, if you could ever be on time for anything, right? None of that's helpful. My wife, Marianne, she works in Philly, and there's a lot of debris on the roads that she has to travel. And so the joy of being her beloved is that 3 or 4 times a year, I'm off to Philly to change a spare tire. One particular day, I was working on a project with a closing deadline, and I get the phone call. So I have to stop what I'm working on. I have to go to the house and get some tools. Then I have to go to 2 different schools and pick up 2 different kids because school was going to be long over by the time I was done with this. And then an hour drive to go find her. We find her. And I remember as I get there, just being a bit frustrated as I get to the tire and I'm pulling this large hunk of metal out of the tire. I remember saying to her, do you aim for this stuff? Right? It's this you statement that was not very helpful to me that evening. The truth is she was not responsible for my poor time management as I was working on something with a closing deadline. See, taking ownership drives away the blame game. R is respect. A good fighter does not belittle. A.J. Anglin says confrontation should always leave a person's dignity intact. You know, when the respected Dr. John Gottman, who has studied marriages, was asked about his research, like what single quality was most detrimental to a couple's well-being, without reservation, he said, contempt. He went on to say, contempt is so lethal to love, it ought to be outlawed. Contempt is any belittling remark that makes your spouse feel smaller. We often disguise it as sarcasm. Sarcasm, another thing that I'm actually good at. See, I've learned a lot about myself in this study. Sarcasm, or even the subtle eye roll, can be toxic to our relationships. Everybody needs respect, and we cannot have healthy relationships without it. See, respect stops contempt, and it makes us listen before passing judgment. And then the E in core is empathy. Good fighters take the time to see it from the other person's point of view. Empathy, it just gives us clarity from how the other person perceives it. It's powerful. But unfortunately, empathy seems to be in short supply when conflict arises. See, statements like, I don't understand him or her. I have no idea what would make them happy. I don't understand why they would. Each statement reveals not just a lack of understanding, but a lack of empathy. Empathy is key to a good fight. And the study says that 90% of marital conflicts could be resolved if each would just take the opportunity to see it from the other person's perspective. 9 out of 10 arguments you get into with your spouse could be resolved in a moment if you would just see it from their perspective. That's core. Cooperation, ownership, respect, and empathy. And the good news is you don't even have to remember all of that in the heat of the moment. Just lean into the one that comes most naturally to you. Because if you look at each one of them individually, you'll see what they do is they drive us away from our selfishness, from you versus me, to us versus the issue. And when we practice the one we naturally lean into, the rest will come. And it's like, why do we even need tools and resources like this? Because as our newlyweds found out in the Song of Songs, there are no perfect people, right? We all have a sin nature. And that perfect spouse that they married, they have come to realize they have issues and baggage of their own. It does not mean, however, that we can't have our own messy version of happily ever after. You know, often we hear words like soulmate or they complete me. And while these statements, they are warm and fuzzy, we need to come to understand that having this expectation of someone else can set us up for failure. I am deeply in love with my wife, but I will never be able to complete her. I will never be able to fully satisfy all of her needs and to bring her ultimate contentment. Not because I don't want to, but because God never designed me to. I am not capable of it. We cannot expect of another to be what God did not create them to be. And we have been looking at the Song of Songs, and we have been continuing to ask, is this a love story with helpful, with relational helps and tips, or is this more? Is this somehow a picture of our relationship with Jesus? And we have kept our minds open to both. And what we see here is that each are unable to bring absolute contentment to each other. That conflict will come. There are no perfect people, but we can be fingers pointing each other to Jesus. We can point each other to Jesus, who is the only perfect one. It is Jesus alone that I can find full contentment and full satisfaction. See, it would be unfair of me to expect my wife to do what only Jesus can do. But we can be fingers pointing each other towards Jesus. It's him and only him who can bring absolute and unfailing contentment. Hey, if you're single and you're looking for the one who can make you fully content, find your contentment in Jesus first. And if you're married and you're looking for contentment, stop looking at your spouse to provide you something that they are unable to provide. They were never created to do. But find your contentment in Jesus. And when we find that, well, then we can find our own messy and sometimes conflict-filled happily ever after with another by having a fully content heart in Jesus. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for checking out our online teaching. If you enjoyed this content and would like some more information about us, head over to our website at www.willowdalechapel.org or download our app. There you can stay up to date on any events, ministries, and other opportunities we have coming up at Willowdale Chapel.